Okay, wondering if we should probably get started now. I think others are probably on their way. As noted in chat, so we won't have time for everyone to do introductions today. Unfortunately, we really do like doing that, but please do feel free to drop your names and surnames in chat, and also the organization that you work for. Sorry, I'm probably interrupting. Katha, you were going to do the introduction. Welcome.
I think you did a good job, Kayin. Thanks. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see some old faces around here. I'm Kosa, and I'm the coordinator of the Western Cape Bridge chapter. And today we're going to be joined by Kayin as our facilitator, Cara from the Doomore Foundation, and Kadima from Kulu Trust. So welcome again, and yeah, enjoy the COP.
Thank you very much. So colleagues, thank you so much for joining the community of practice. Just so everyone knows, I'm not sure if this is your first time joining, but Bridge has a number of communities of practice across the country. The Western Cape and KZN in particular have their sort of provincial COPs, but there is also a national ECD CoP. And I think our intention here is to really provide a learning space for professional organizations working within ECD within the province. I personally have found it a very valuable space and have been involved for a number of years. So I helped to facilitate this COP. In the recent sessions, we've had a bit of a focus on parenting. That's been sort of one of the themes that we've started to engage on this year. So yeah, that's going to be sort of the governing theme for today's session, and we'll have some presentations on that. But before we get into that, Tendek and I would like to do just a quick sort of an update from what's current within the sector, so that any new developments we're all on the same page regarding. And then yeah, we can move into the topic specifically. Tendek, I'm not sure if there's anything you'd like to lead with on the introduction.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks, Kayin. Can everybody hear me? Okay. So could I maybe suggest, Kayin, that we get updates from other members first, and then we can then provide update. Well, then I can provide updates. I mean, I don't necessarily have a lot to report on, apart from just the activities that have been happening in the intersectoral forum, which Bridge and a few of us are part of. But really the whole purpose is for us just to get updates with some things that are happening within our organizations, and they're worthwhile information for the rest of us to know. So I'd just like to then maybe open the floor and just see if there are any updates people would like to share.
So colleagues, feel free to either raise your hand or just unmute, and you're welcome to come in if there's an update that you'd like to share. So I can add a couple of quick ones. The long-awaited ECD ESRF process has started moving again. So it does seem that the department has seen the approval of the rollover request for the funds, and it does seem that there'll be a second round of payments which will be initiated over the next month or so. We're also, there's been a movement in terms of the ECD vaccination drive. I'm sure many are aware. There's been sort of recognition of the ECD workforce as a critical area that needs to be where practitioners need to be vaccinated. There are no very relevant updates regarding the Children's Amendment Bill, but I think are worth sharing at this stage. Any other updates the colleagues would like to quickly just?
Okay. Perhaps then I can share. I think maybe it might be worth noting on the Children's Amendment Bill that there has been a technical team that's been set up it consists of civil society, as well as DBE, DSD, and also national, and also the local municipalities. SALGA is also represented on that body, and really they're there to assist the Department of Basic Education with the Second Amendment Bill, which I understand is like a split process from the current, from the Children's Amendment Bill. So yeah, there's that technical team that's feeding into that process. And then I think just from a collaborative point of view, Bridge and NECTA and Congress, we usually collaborate on civil society issues as well. And we've been convening quite a lot over the past 2 days, just trying to figure out a way to engage DBE on workforce issues, because the function shift, the proclamation's been made on the function shift, and there will be changes for the sector. So we're just trying to advocate for inclusion of the workforce, and really just trying to make a plea for DBE not to forget about ECD as it pertains to 0 to 4. So those are the updates that I have from my side.
Thanks, Dandeka. And then one last update that I'm aware of is with regards to the function shift. I'm sure many of us are aware that the proclamation has now been signed, and so the Department of Basic Education will certainly be taking on the function from the 1st of April. There is also a draft document that I think the NECT have been supporting the Department of Basic Education in drafting, which sort of outlines what the department's vision is regarding the function shift. I think they've been splitting, historically they've sort of split the idea of inheriting the function as is, and then a separate conversation, I think, longer term around function improvement. But my understanding is that they're aiming to have a meeting in early August, and then sharing that document for comment to the sector. So hopefully, within the next month, we should be seeing what that vision in terms of what the department will actually be taking on, as well as an opportunity for organizations to comment. And I believe the NECT will also be holding a dialogue for the sector to engage with, I think there are 7 technical teams that have been set up to handle specific subsections of the function shift. So yeah, that's everything I am aware of, but other colleagues are welcome to join in before otherwise we'll move on to the first topic. Okay, looks like we're good for a sector update. Oh, I mean, one last thing, and Pam, please do join in if I missed something, but obviously we're aware there's been significant unrest within KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. There's sort of a working group that's convened around just determining whether or not the extent to which ECD has been affected. It does seem that there is a significant problem with hunger within KwaZulu-Natal specifically. So there is a bit of a working group that's been established trying to coordinate a sectoral response to supporting nutritional needs of young children in KwaZulu-Natal there's a mix of food providing infrastructure being disrupted, as well as an increase in prices that has caused increased food insecurity in the province at the moment. And the Do More team have been heavily involved in that. So Cara and Pam probably are also able to contribute there if they want. Okay. Cool. I'm going to move on to the first topic. So we luckily have Kadma Ibrahim, who's the CEO of the Makulu Trust, who's joining us today to talk about a parenting support project showcase. This is continuing from the theme that we've been engaging on in previous meetings, where we've been talking about, I think conceptually where we're at the moment is we see with the function shift happening, the Department of Social Development potentially are going to continue to hold parenting, and we think that this is a critical area of critical strategic area that we need to help deepen the the sector's understanding of and help to coordinate some of the responses around. So today we'd like to get some insight into that, that topic. And just so colleagues know, the Bridge group are also working on a conference, or not conference, a seminar later in the year that will be working with partners in order to coordinate. But today, Katham is going to be presenting on the Parenting Support Project Showcase. So Parenthood in South Africa is initiated by SAPN, the South African the Positive Parenting Implementing Network. And this project aims to develop a holistic but light touch platform for parents to access support on anything they may need. So please, Katham, please join us and present on that.
Hi, thanks Ken, and thanks Ken and Thandeka for your updates. I think the work you guys are doing are probably the updates that we wanted the most. I was at least interested in the most, because it's been hard to keep up with everything that's been happening on that front. Good, thanks Ken for the introduction, and to Thandeka and Kota for all of the work in organizing the COP again this time around. I'm gonna share my screen. I think I'm allowed to do that. So I'm, as Ken mentioned, I'm Kadima. I'm the CEO of the Mikulu Trust. But this afternoon, I'm also wearing a second hat as a member of SAPN, the South African Parenting Program Implementers Network. And I'm going to do just a brief introduction to this project, which is called Parenthood SA. Please feel free to sort of jump in with questions or anything additional that you that I haven't shared, but I think we might have questions afterwards as well. So perhaps let me start with just saying a little bit more about SAPN. So the South African Parenting Program Implementers Network is a relatively new sort of body of that was founded in 2018. It's a network. SAPN is a network of parenting organizations that provide a large range of support services to parents across South Africa. The network was formed around 2018, really just in the interest of creating a common voice, a common message around the role of parenting, in both related to sort of education outcomes, but more specifically around the goal of reducing violence against children and leveraging the theory of change between training and supporting parents and the impact that that has on violence in the home and violence against children. So Mikulu Trust is a member of the SAPN network, and on the right-hand side, really the purpose is to strengthen the voice of the civil society network that works with families by creating collaboration and shared learning across its members. And our vision, which again is really very strongly linked to violence against children, is that SAPN builds a secure future for all who live in South Africa by helping families create warm and non-violent homes for children. So if you have any sort of more specific, I'm not going to spend much more time talking about SAPN, but if you have more specific questions or need some more on this, please chat to me afterwards. All right, so Parenthood SA, this is really, it's a project that has very recently been funded and started just this month. And my intention with sharing it here through the Bridge platform is to get other role players involved, or at least interested or aware of the work that's going into this project from an early stage, and to build interaction with others who are serving parents from the beginning of the project. And you know, the concept or the idea of this started, you know, as with many things during the dark days of the first hard lockdown. I'd spoken and engaged with many NGOs and NGO leaders just who were thinking about and trying to figure out, what do we need to do to support the parents that we usually work with that we can now no longer reach in person? And you know, there were many organizations, whether it was part of the original mandate or a sort of a pivot that they needed to make, who were looking into supporting parents through WhatsApp or creating resource hubs and so on for parents. And there were a few things that sort of, you know, a few thoughts that had come up, and the overarching notion is, for me at least, was that I wonder if there's an easier way that we can, if there's a way that we can make this easier for parents, whereas, you know, at that stage, perhaps it was, the focus was very strongly programming. How do we reach parents with our programs through some sort of digital medium and so on? But looking at it from the parent's perspective, how can we make this easier and, you know, very, very accessible for them? And this was the sort of initial conversation around, or initial thoughts around Parenthood SA. And I've taken this concept to the SAPA network and really sort of brainstormed a little bit about it. You know, what could this be? Is there a role for a centralized place that is really designed for parents, with parents in mind, and not really with a goal of one specific organization, whether it's Mikulu Trust or any of the SAPA members in mind, but really looking at a holistic, looking at parents' needs from a holistic perspective. So the purpose here on the right-hand side, you know, that we really deliberated is that we would, the purpose of the Parenthood SA is to provide one space where parents can go to as a starting point for support on parenting. And so you see, this purpose is quite general. It's not about Mikulu Trust or book sharing or even early child development exactly to say that, but it's about really a broader vision and that. And the vision here that we'd sort of written up for the platform, Parenthood SA, is that all parents have access to a single space, a single place for guidance and support on parenting. And if we sort of unpack this a little bit, sorry, I can't see my slides very nicely. Okay, so the objectives of the Parenthood SA platform, the main objective would be to, through the platform, we're able to create nurturing and enabling environments for children by firstly centralizing access to support for their parents, reaching parents or caregivers who may not have access to services elsewhere. So I mean, parenting work is very intensive. It's really about trying to influence and change parents' behaviors to be more stimulating and nurturing. And that work is very in person, it's very personal, it's very long term. And most parenting organizations are geographically located in the communities of the parents that they wish to serve. And there are large numbers of communities that are not served just because of the structure of parenting work. And so this purpose is, rather the Parenthood SA is also meant to be able to provide services to people who don't have access to in-person support. It's meant to be a light touch support service. So it's not meant to be able to solve the really in-depth challenges that parents have, but it's meant to be a starting point for support for parents. It's also meant to look at how we can collaborate across the sector to create a unified voice to strengthen parenting nationally. And I can talk about the collaboration parts just in a bit. And then lastly, it's to provide parents with easy or remote access. I see some things flashing in the chat, so no, they're not for me, so I will skip ahead. Please do interrupt me if you'd like to ask any questions. So yeah, so this concept, we developed it at a high level and started speaking to a few different possible funders, and the project has since been funded to really look at a pilot or pre-pilot. I don't know, what the technical term is called, but to look at putting in a little bit of work to figure out, number one, if parents would parents be interested in a centralized remote, cell phone-based support system that they can access, and if they were to access it, what would it look like? What would they find there if they were to go there? So this is really, again, about putting the focus on the parents and not asking, what is it that I, Mikulu Trust, want to offer parents, but rather, what is it that parents are interested in accessing? And so the first part of the project is this the design of the solution, where it's heavily focused and meant to focus on the user experience. What do parents want? What do parents need? How do they need it? How do they want to feel when they engage with us through this thing? And also look at, well, what type of content the parents are interested in. And this may or may not come from members within the SAPA network. And this is where everybody in this community also comes in. If parents are telling us, they need support on, I can't think of something I know, but for example, if mental health is a strong topic that they need support on, we'll obviously look within the SAPA network, but also look at what other organizations are offering in terms of mental health that can be useful and accessible for parents through the platform. There'll be, some branding around Parent to Say that we need to develop, and obviously some M&E. So this is one, the main external part of the project. The second part is then also really to focus on looking at how to develop how this model is going to work. If we're looking at a number of organizations working together on a collaborative project that isn't really owned by one organization, perhaps driven by one, but not really owned, but collectively owned, how are we going to all work together? So really developing this blueprint or operating model for how this platform might be working. And then there'll obviously be some campaign work around getting the platform out. And this is also, again, where all of you come in once the platform is initially designed for its first sort of test phase, getting it out to parents so that it can be used and we can get some useful feedback on how it's being perceived. And then just very briefly on again, more about why I'm bringing it to this group. In question on how will the project integrate or interact with the larger sector. So this is a collaborative project where the platform is not really meant to be, it's not going to produce new content. It's not meant to be a new thing that doesn't, we're not creating a new thing. What we're doing is creating an avenue for parents to access support on things that already exist. And for the work that you as organizations in this forum, for the work that you're already serving parents with, a question that you should sort of sit with is, how can the platform be useful to you to help get your work to parents? The second point is that it should be holistic. So again, it's not about one organization's work or goals or content, but it's about what do parents need holistically, and where within the sector can we get that to put it all together for parents in a way that's useful to them. And then, as I mentioned already, it's light touch. This is not meant to be a mechanism to deliver formal programming. Perhaps that's what parents will tell us that they want programs over, I don't know, WhatsApp, but it's not meant to be that. It's meant to be a starting point for support, where it can eventually refer out into more formal programming if that is what the parents need. Yeah, and so, like I said, the intention is to sort of bring this out into the open, into the sector. And there are a few sort of questions, perhaps in my mind. How would you like to interact with the Parenthood SA project? And what benefit can Parenthood SA bring to your context? We don't have to answer those questions exactly, but I'm happy to chat around anything around what I've shared. Yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavima. Wonderful and interesting presentation. Also excellently timed, as always.
Oh, wonderful. I wasn't actually watching my time.
Yeah, so it's open at other colleagues for questions, thoughts, suggestions. Please feel free to raise your hand and I'll come to you. Otherwise, you can just unmute yourself and
Kayin, can I come in? It's Lee from True North.
please.
Kathima, thank you. Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks. Yeah, I absolutely love the idea. And just something I was thinking about when you were talking is that the centralized idea is fabulous and remote, but what about centralized and not remote? So with the same idea, but actually having, because I mean, as an organization, we've been working with the preschools, training principals on how to connect and reach their parents. But it would be so wonderful if like the ECD forum could have a centralized area for parents with the same kind of information that they could find remotely. Yeah, just a thought that came to my mind. And that would even work.
I don't think I'm fully understanding the centralized but not remote. If you can give me a little bit more on that, or otherwise we can perhaps chat after.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like the information that would be found on the remote platform could be found in an actual building in a community as well.
I hear you. Okay, I hear you. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So a lot of the first step of the project is really for us to ask parents, you know, as I said, how would this work for you? What would work? In which way can this be structured? You know, that it would work for you. And yeah, so if that's something that comes out, you know, through the process, through the research, that's definitely what we would work with and consider. We haven't gone into this with a set idea of what the solution is going to look like.
Okay.
And yeah, it's part of the process to design that based on what parents want.
Okay, thanks, Kathima.
That sounds good, Lee.
Thanks, that was a useful question. While I'm waiting for others, something that occurs to me in listening to this is it seems like quite a good match. I mean, you've used the term platform, but hinted towards WhatsApp. And I like when the kind of technology matches the potential user experience. Like, I think app-based processes seem to work better for institutional delivery, and WhatsApp seems to work quite well when reaching directly into the home, from what I have seen historically in terms of how programs have been designed. So yeah, just sort of thought in terms of which technologies are most appropriate for which purposes.
Yeah. And conceptualize it somehow. And for me, the easiest way to think about it was through sort of a WhatsApp solution, but it by no means is going to be the end solution. But yeah, that's a good insight. Thanks, Kayin.
I see Tundeka and then Mignon's hands. So Tundeka, would you like to come in?
Yes, thanks, Kayin. Thanks, Kazima, for that presentation. And I think it's such a wonderful, it's going to be such a wonderful resource for parents out there. So, but my question, and I guess it's not just for you, it's for everybody who is working with parents here. What are the things that parents usually look for? So, you know, in terms of resources, right? What are the, if we were to say like the top 3 resources that parents usually want information from? Is it like information from Home Affairs? Is it information on social grants? So I'm just trying to get a sense of, you know, what kind of information do we start building in this in this kind of platform?
Yeah, and again, the research that we're planning to do with parents is also going to be content specific. You know, what are the things that you need support on? What type of content do you? I mean, we're not going to ask the question in that way, but we want them to guide us even on the content. And I mean, this is a 12-month project, really putting a lot in the research phase and some of the initial design phase. But the vision is that this is it's going to be a 5-year thing. And at the end of 5 years is probably only when we're going to be able to reach, to cover all or most of the content pieces that parents are interested in. So at this point, it's going to be about like, okay, what are all the things that you are interested in? But perhaps what are the top 5 or 7 aspects that we should cover, that we can cover in the first year, in this first iteration. So there's going to be some prioritization, but also helpful for others to share what their experience is of what parents need. And I'm also very wary on answering this question myself, because I know what parents need from an ECD perspective, in the book sharing context or whatever. And I imagine that others will have the same answer based on the context that they are working within. And that's why it's important to ask parents, because they're the ones who are accessing services from 10 different organizations, for example. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Very useful. Mignon?
Thanks. Really lovely project. I was just wondering about the research phase. Will the different organizations involved in the network, are they each going to be conducting research with their own sort of cohort of beneficiaries or parents that they're reaching, or how do you envisage that all happening?
So it's going to be with a sort of user design company, essentially, whose bread and butter is to speak to people and understand understand people's needs and so on. So it's not necessarily going to come from the network of SAPN organizations. Again, we're not trying to push any specific network or organization's agenda, but really putting it to the parents. And so you going through using either doing some UX research or ethnographic research. I'm speaking to a number of companies. I'm learning a lot about this. And they're going to figure out which parents should we speak to, where do we find these parents, and so on.
Yeah. Great.
So I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. So please do. I see Lydia's hand is up. Lydia, would you like to come in?
Hi. Thanks for the nice presentation, and it's nice to be back after like a long big break. I've listened to your presentation and I'm thinking of the research phase. Just to share like my latest experience in doing research on best ways of communicating with parents around homework, specifically maths homework. And the one part where we started at was the profile of the parent. Who's the parent? Where does the parent live? How does the parent communicate? How does the parent have access to information? And it was in the Transkei area in Bizane and Mthatha. And what we found was that 80% of the children stay with the grandparents or an aunt. And in this case, the parent profile looked like a 70-year-old or 80-year-old that's looking after a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old. Illiterate, can't read or write, never ever used a cell phone, have completely different kinds of means of communicating and accessing information, and have like their old ways of it. And if you look at the profile of South Africa, that's very much the kind of profile that we have of parents, especially within our rural areas. So I'm thinking of, within your research question, would you look at profiling of what the parent will look like, and obviously what I've also learned is that what we as change agents, when we want to do something, we have a certain understanding of what it is that people want or communities want or need. And I mean, one of our findings was that is there somebody that can just come and test our eyes so we can have access to glasses? And I mean, I was like, things like we've never ever thought of was part of the profiling of the parent. It's just sharing something with you as an experience.
That's really useful, Lydia, and I'd love to chat about it offline, because one of the things that the UX designers do is that they create user personas, which is exactly what you're talking about, that the 70-year-old grandmother who's illiterate and never used a cell phone would be one of the 5 personas, for example, that we would be basing the design on. So yeah, the insights into that persona would be very useful, I think, too. I would love to chat to you about that. But yeah, we intend to look at a range of types of parents. We won't obviously be able to cover every single type of parent in this first round, but definitely looking at a range that's relatively inclusive. Thanks, Lydia. I see there's 2 more hands, Ken. I don't know if you're gonna have time for them now.
So we have decided to minimize some of the time we're going to spend in a later session. So we do have time for 2 more hands. Pam, and then.
Thanks. Really, really interesting, Fatima, and hats off to you guys. My assumption is that this is talking to parents of any age of child, and how you will ensure that young children, parents of young children, are not forgotten, and particularly those teenage parents who are often school going themselves.
Yeah, great, thanks, Pam. So again, within this 12-month project, we're going to need to do some prioritization. I think with us Mikulu being the sort of project managers and leaders, we might be able to make the decision to start off with parents of young children, which I personally think is an excellent idea. But the way that the service is likely going to happen is that there's going to be some initial questions. How old are you as a parent? How old is your child? And then the way that the parent is going to be served is going to be based on their specific context. So there'll be a dedicated section of the the way that the user engages with this. If they are parents of young children, they will only be engaging with things that are relevant to young children. And to add to that, Pam, you know, it's going to be user driven. So we are not going to be giving the parent anything. They are going to be coming to us and saying, this is what I need. And based on their needs, we will serve them with you know, what's relevant or what we can. It's not going to be the other way around, where we are sort of sending everyone the same information. It's going to be targeted at them as an individual. If that makes sense.
Lovely, thank you, Karma. And then Tara, would you like to come in last?
Yeah, Katima, thank you so much. I mean, this is very exciting and very badly needed in our country. With all that was highlighted in terms of importance in recognizing what parents require. It's also parents of children with disabilities. So if the primary caregiver, this is children with learning barriers, physical disabilities, and we all know how early identification is so important, and that it really, really needs to be informed at a very young age for the growth of that child and the needs at the latest. So, and you know, just to consider that as also one of the priorities.
Great. And definitely, I think, again, that's going to be, you know, that will be one of the, probably one of the avenues where, you know, one of the questions to parents might be, does your child have a disability, or do you wonder about whether your child has a disability, and probably taking the parent through a journey to help them identify and access support on whether their child has a disability or not. So yeah, you know, it's an avenue that our organization doesn't have lots of expertise on, but this is why we're bringing this to the sector, because we can't, for that part of the service, we would need your type of expertise to say, okay, well, this is the type of things that parents will are likely going to need to know on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that really stimulating and thought-provoking discussion, Kadam. I hope that has been a bit of food for thought at this early stage.
Definitely. And yeah, I just want to say that, you know, this was meant as an introduction, just opening it up. If you want to sort of keep up with, you know, project updates, I haven't quite figured out how we're going to do all of that, but feel free to drop me an email, and we'll try to keep you all in touch.
And I don't know who you've already been in touch with, but I'd be happy to connect you with, I mean, I know Embrace has used WhatsApp to support parenting historically, and then I know if you do end up using WhatsApp, obviously Mum Connect and Impande have got a wealth of experience, and I think Side by Side are also just a useful campaign to, you know, like in my ideal world, what Mum Connect and Side by Side do links to something potentially like this, so that the journey of a parent who sort of goes through the health system links up, if that makes sense, because there's a lot of resources, but they are potentially disparate. And so, yeah, so that's the sort of way that I'm thinking about it, but we'll chat more afterwards.
Perfect, sounds great, thanks, Ken.
Okay, so yeah, with no more ado, we can move on to the next topic. So thank you for that wonderful presentation. So the second topic is going to be presented by Kara from the DUMO Foundation. Kara has been helping to develop a set of resources to support parenting. I believe this project started during the lockdown, but yeah, please do come in, Kara.
Thank you. I'm just sharing my screen. I may switch my video off if my Wi-Fi bugs out a little bit, just so you can make sure that you can still see the presentation. But hi, everyone. Really nice to be on here, and thanks for the opportunity to showcase our parenting resource hub that we've been working on. My name is Kara Goshen. I head up communications and the Repurpose for Purpose program at the DUMO Foundation. Our initiatives focus on young children at a national level, specifically around nutrition, early learning, and parenting support. And then we also have various community development projects that focus on easing hunger, ECD, supporting youth through enterprise development. And this takes place in our community project areas of Nkomazi, Pongola, Hammersdale, and Worcester. Just a little bit of background to the platform and kind of how it developed. So when COVID hit us early last year, we developed a two-pronged approach. Firstly, focusing on getting food to young children, and that, thankfully, we managed to distribute over 10.4 million meals so far, thanks to our awesome nonprofit partners, as well as our private sector partners, and our founder, RCL Foods, who's one of the largest food manufacturers in South Africa. Secondly, goal 2, we focused on supporting caregivers through the development of an online parenting resource hub, a really kind of basic version of what we were talking about earlier. And yeah, I'm really interested to see if this would possibly feed into any kind of learnings from our side to build the bigger platform that you're talking about. So the resource hub is what I'm going to be presenting on today. We also, as part of our second goal, focused on providing resources to assist ECD centers and programs to reopen. So the resource hub was developed during the early stages of lockdown level 5, when there was just this flood of incredible material coming through the early learning or the ECD space. So organizations of every size were offering up their materials to support parents and caregivers during this time, whether it was through psycho-emotional support, resources for home learning, or simple ways to just keep children busy. You name it, someone had it. But the only problem was that this flooded information was quite overwhelming, and parents didn't really know where to start. So that was really the aim of setting this up, was just to create an eclectic database of early learning resources for stimulation at home, some psycho-emotional support materials for caregivers, as well as other ECD related resources for principals and practitioners. And to build this, we weren't going to recreate anything. We were just going to harness the expertise and knowledge that already existed in the sector, since everyone was offering up their resources. So what we did is essentially taking 3-page infographics and putting them into 30-second videos. We took written documents and put it into voice recordings, for example, in 4 different languages, because we know audio is a lot easier to send and lighter on data than a video. We developed a list of websites and apps that focused on early learning within SA, both data-free or otherwise. And then we hosted a webinar with professional, answering kind of common questions by parents, and we summarized these into short little audio bits as well that we managed to upload. So our focus was really on just making the messages easily digestible and really helpful for caregivers. And we also wanted to keep all of this in one place, hence the kind of one-stop shop for parents, caregivers, and others. I just want to, sorry, going back to the actual website itself. So this is what the Parenting Resource Hub looks like. It's hosted on our Do More Foundation website. So there were no extra funds required to set this up. It's ideally been designed for use on a smartphone, because we know most parents are accessing these resources through their phones, but it also works really well on desktop too, as you can see. Someone give me a thumbs up if you can see it properly, or if I need to zoom in at all.
Zooming in would be useful.
Sure. Better?
Yeah, it's a bit better.
Okay, great. So the Parenting Resource Hub essentially looks like this. The first section really focuses on it hosts some audios and PDFs and videos. This was our session with Renee Lighton. She answered some really nice questions, and then we just made these into little audio clips that they can click on, and she talks to that subject for a bit. The UNICEF top tips that were going around were also amazing. So what we did was we just got our team to read them out into different languages, and then we uploaded them as audio files as well. So it's really light on data. Yeah, those were the 6 tips there. The Chwara Ghana Cabana resources were awesome as well. We've uploaded all of the infographics on this. If they click through, sorry, it might be a little bit slow. It takes them to the obviously full infographic, all the different ideas, and they can download the PDF version, which we've also compressed slightly, so it's not a lot of data. And then of course also the awesome UNICEF mini parenting masterclasses. These have got links through to the YouTube video themselves that they can play. It covers a range of different topics. And then if they go through to more resources, it actually takes them to the UNICEF page where it talks to that specific topic. So that was kind of the hard resources that we uploaded to the back end under the first section. The second section provides descriptions and links to other organizations' resource pages, just noting at the bottom whether they're data free or not. So how parents would essentially work with them, they could click on any of these. And then, for example, African storybooks, it gives a little description of what they would find here, whether it's data free or not. Same with, for example, Easy Peasy. This one's not data free. This is an actual app that they can download. So we provided those different links. But as you can see here, this is also really light on data because it's just their logo, a description of what the resource is, a link through to the actual website, and then a note at the bottom to kind of describe whether it's data free or not. The third section really focuses on psychosocial emotional support articles. We are looking to expand the section drastically as new resources start to emerge for parents, especially in light of last week's violence. We are working swiftly to upload these as soon as possible. So there's just articles that have been summarized into really nice little images, also light on data, and then acknowledgement at the end of each article as to where it came from. And then lastly, the fourth section, we've included a section for staff working in the ECD sector, so specifically practitioners or principals, but anyone can really access this. And these resources come directly from ECD organizations well-versed in the space, and we're looking to expand the section. So Smart Start had some great resources for reopening. Elifa's always got amazing stuff, and it's same with Smart Start as well, their policy hub, which we can expand as well, but this kind of section is reserved for the program facilitator or practitioner, etc. Sorry, I'm just working my way through the presentation. Okay, great. So in terms of learnings, and I'm really excited to share these with you, what worked well, as well as the challenges that we experienced along this journey. What worked really well for us was making sure that the page can handle all the resources and also the way that we set these up. So under the first section, you would have seen that we actually uploaded the videos and infographics and audio clips to the site. We do try to keep this to a minimum because the more that we add here, the slower the website takes to load, the more data, etc. So that's what we wanted to try and avoid. And then what worked really well is that second section where we host a large number of new resources from fellow organizations. Since it is just a logo and a link that needs to be uploaded, this keeps the page really fast loading, light on data. And it directs the users directly to the website. So also giving, also allowing us to drive more kind of more page views to our partners' site. So kind of a win-win situation there. The distribution channels as well. We do what we did best in this space was is using the incredible partnerships that we have with a variety of stakeholders. So this was shared with a lot of our private sector partners for distribution to their employees. So above and beyond the actual resource hub, we also set up a separate communication schedule with parenting messages. It was largely, you would have seen those descriptions per organization as well as the link. We made those into really nice JPEGs and just simple things that companies could send out to their employees on their existing communication channels. And we also offer this all to all of our private partners free of charge, just as our way to give back to them. Also, we had the communication schedule translated into different languages, so they could post the message depending on what the language of their employees. So just as a quick example from RCL Foods, so they provided some stats for us on the uptake from employees. They have shared these messages and resources on their social media channels, as well as through the Let's Talk Employees app, which reaches employees from the factory floor right up to top level management. Unfortunately, these are the latest figures I have because they're provided quarterly, but you can see here that there is really some decent uptake by employees in terms of the app. Those that actively engaged, so read, watched, and went into more detail on the resources over the past 3 months were just under 1,200 unique users. And then on the social media platforms, it reached about 8,328 people, and the engagement rate of 2.38. It's just a fancy word of saying that there was good engagement with the post. So people were watching it, liking it, sharing it. This is quite a good number from our end, considering the fact that this is all organic. So there's no spend put behind any of these social media posts. It's just put out to the company's followers. So yeah, that private sector to reach employees as parents, and also kind of building relationship with parents, with employees beyond just being an employee, but actually acknowledging them as parents. We found had some really kind of positive feedback from our comms team. So this was also shared across a lot of our existing communication channels on a monthly basis. So our social media accounts and newsletters. We also share this through various WhatsApp groups that our team sits on with practitioners and principals. And during lockdown, we also created a WhatsApp group for caregivers to join, where we also just send through that bite-sized information. We found that doing that weekly was ideal. If we're doing it every day, it's too much. So our team also drives uptake through our young child forums that's hosted with ECD staff in our key project areas. That's kind of our communication channels. And of course, it's always an area that can be improved as much as possible to try and reach more parents and share these resources with them. Lastly, what worked really well was managing this hub in-house. So we're fortunate enough to be able to build and adapt the resource hub ourselves in-house without cost. So it takes out the reliance on a pro bono partner to make changes or and just allows us to, update or upload new resources really quickly and as they come through. As I said, it was not without its challenges, and these are currently what we're working on at the moment. So limited analytics. This broke my heart in the beginning, as you can imagine, because unfortunately, during the peak of the distribution of this platform, the plugin that we use to kind of measure uptake on our website, so how many people are visiting it and how they're interacting with it, it malfunctioned, and it took over 6 months to get right. I won't get into the detail of it, but I would advise any organization who wants to measure the number of users on your site to make sure that your Google Analytics plugin actually works. Nevertheless, a lesson learned, and we are all up and running now. So I just want to show you a few of the stats that we've managed to pull based on our website. Over the past 4.5 months since it was running, we had 590 people come and visit. These are unique visits, so different individuals logging on, and 217 repeat visits, with them spending about an average of 2 minutes on the site. And remember, this is mainly because they log on, find a resource, and then go to that site. So they'll log on, for example, and go to Makula Trust or Bookdash or Elru, all of the other resources that are uploaded on there. And then we also on the analytics able to see when the most parents are coming on or most users are coming on, and those peaks interestingly happen mid-June and towards the end of July. So that's just an example of the basic analytics that we're working on and how we can measure that. But beyond that, we don't have really in-depth knowledge of who these people are that are visiting, because obviously we're not provided that through the website stats. The second challenge, focusing on the zero rating of the hub or making it data free, essentially so that parents can log on or caregivers can log on and access the whole website free of charge without any data. I'm sure many of you are wondering if it is data free. We have been meeting with a variety of different service providers and partners since last year to try and find the best way to make it data free. Fortunately, unfortunately, none of the avenues have been successful yet. We found that this was largely due to the fact that it is extremely expensive for us to cover these costs ourselves, and the fees vary monthly based on the different usage. So making it quite difficult to convince a partner to invest in this unless it's capped, because one month it could be 1,000 Rand, the other month 35,000 Rand, etc. So we have, however, made recent headway and submitted our application to zero rate the site through DBE. Really appreciate all of the direction and assistance from DGMT. They provided us a lot of help with getting the right people and submitting our application. So, but in light of this challenge, we always have this data savvy thinking on our minds. So we have built it to be as light as possible on data, and we've included as many data-free resources as possible as well. Just lastly, adding your resources, and if you are wanting to join the platform, share your knowledge, etc., we're always looking for new and exciting resources to keep our caregivers visiting the resource hub and to drive traffic to our fellow organizations' websites. We really we rely largely vet these materials before we upload them to the resource hub, and then obviously vetting them ourselves from a data standpoint if they're really going to work for this site. The only other barrier is obviously the type of format that your resource comes in. So as mentioned, we're trying to keep the site as light as possible on data. So the types of resources we'd like to continue uploading needs to be already uploaded on your website. So it's just simply a click through. But if it's not uploaded on your website, I don't know, we could work on some compressed PDFs or YouTube video links or audio clips or something along those lines. If you are interested in partnering with us and making your resources available on this hub, we would love to hear from you. You can do this by completing the form. I'm going to pop that into the group chat as soon as I stop sharing the screen. And then I'll send through this presentation to the Bridge team as well to share. All the links will be on the presentation, so just give them a click. Thank you. And that's all from my side. Thanks so much for your time. I'd love to hear from you if there's any questions, advice, or comments. And Pam, please add in anything that I've missed out.
Pam's hand is already up, so I think she will. Thanks, Cara. That was a really interesting presentation. It's the second time I've heard it, and I'm still overwhelmed by how much work your team did during lockdown last year. So very impressive. And just to note, before we get into the questions, it feels like there are these pieces of content creation. You've got sort of the creation of the content, the kind of curation of the content, and then there's the communication of the content. And what both your and Kadama's project seem to be focusing on is that last piece of sort of getting it into the hands of parents, which I think is often a hard piece and a piece that people don't necessarily focus on as much. So I think it's a really useful piece of work. Okay, so Pam, your hand is up. Lydia's, your hand is up as well. I'm not sure if that's an old hand. And yeah, please feel free to come in with comments and suggestions. So Pam, do you want to go first?
So thanks, Cara, for a brilliant presentation and for really covering everything that our team has done and how you've managed to put it all together. The only thing I want to add actually leads on what Kayin is saying, is that there is brilliant content out there. But what we found is there's very little research on parent uptake. And I think this could be a very useful way of us cooperating with this new Parenthood South Africa, is how do we empower parents, A, to know what's out there, and B, on how to use technology to download it, and C, to get them actually using it. And I'm maybe put that challenge to Lydia from a research point of view, is, you know, how do we drive that parent uptake? How do we enable and build their capacity to make use of these incredible resources?
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Yeah. So any other comments, suggestions, questions, thoughts? Lydia, I'm not sure if you're able to respond to Pam's question as well, if you'd like to.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, I can respond immediately, but what I've from my own experience working with parents and like moving into the different provinces, and also the kinds of things what parents want, the kind of communication that parents want, each one is so different. And you can't go in and say, oh, I've got like my 10 questions and I'm going to ask the 10 questions. You have to, when you go out, to find what it is that people want and what makes a person a parent or a mother or a father or caring for another child or another person. It really like is that one-to-one personal interaction and having that conversation. COVID makes it very difficult, obviously, to do this kind of thing. And I think we've got so much learnings from our periods during the 70s and 80s of where communication between and amongst people were limited because of, for certain reasons. And I think for early childhood development centers, for example, is almost like to build that street community, street committee, where people can talk to each other and then build up. If you really want to know within a bigger network, what are the kinds of needs that people have. And then obviously at schools, but it makes it, that one-to-one conversation is so very important, and technology cannot replace it. And I think that's why the big question all over is how do we reach parents, and what is it that we can provide for parents? I've shared this morning in one of our groups. Jed is having this conversation in a boot camp over 8 weeks. I don't know if people received it, but yeah, if you're interested, then I can just share the link here and to sign up for it, where we're precisely going to have this conversation. Yeah.
Thanks, Lydia. And I can already see there's a lot of interest in the chat. So if you would be willing to share that link, that would be very useful. Thandeka, your hand is up. Would you like to come in?
Yes, thanks, Kayin. And thanks, Cara, for a very nice presentation that you did. So I wanted to know, with the analytics that you guys were able to generate, are you finding that it's more like parenting organizations who are using the resources? Well, are you able to tell at this point, you know, if it's like the parenting organizations or like ECD organizations to share with parents, you know, that are currently using the resources?
So, I mean, it's really just assumption at this point, given who we're sharing this resource hub with, which is practitioners, parents, caregivers, and those that will, find useful. But no, that is one of the biggest limitations of building a website-based parenting resource hub is, obviously a lot of their information is protected when they come on. We can't get a lot of access to their demographics or anything like that. They're just seen as a user and where they're from, which is 100% of them are from South Africa.
Thanks, Karen. If there are any other questions, please unmute yourself or put up your hand. I'm interested in a point that Lydia made around, technology's ability to not necessarily replace the strong relationships that in-person communities have. And my sense is that this is at a core, one of the challenges that parenting programs struggle with is what can be scaled through technology. Carmen had noted a light touch earlier, and I think that's often what technology can achieve. I think that through WhatsApp, more of a deeper relationship can be developed, but it's often still nothing that's completely comparable. But yeah, to me, there's sort of an interesting thing there of are we scaling just the distribution of resources, or are we sometimes scaling conversations where people are able to express themselves and feel heard and then responded to appropriately? And sometimes, that distinction can be interesting. So it's just a thought that I had listening to Lydia. Any other comments or suggestions?
That makes my life easy. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, great. Thanks, Cara. Your presentation was really, really interesting. Okay, so the third topic that we're going to be moving on to today is really just a quick consultation. I noted at the top of the meeting that, as a community of practice, we've been working towards trying to put together a seminar on parenting. Our understanding is that there's a strategic imperative, both because we want to focus the attention on parenting for young children, and because there's potentially a moment with the function shift where this may be something which we can push for more clearly with the Department of Social Development. So we've been sort of conceptualizing it in that way. But yeah, I think we wanted to kind of get a chance to feed back to the group and get thoughts from the group. So Tendeka, can I ask you to come in and to speak to that point?
Yes, thanks, Kayin. I'm just going to share my screen with you colleagues. Just so that we able to just follow each other as we chat. Can everybody see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. And do I need to make it bigger?
Yes, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. So, colleagues, as Kayin mentioned, we are really...
Would you mind making a little bit bigger? I think if you zoom in even, I'll fill you in. One more. I think that's perfect.
Yeah. Let me just stop. Let me show my video as well. So, colleagues, Kayin mentioned that we have been having ongoing discussions around parenting in the Western Cape ECD CoP, I think from the first or the second CoP, actually. So we had this question on, how do we elevate the role of young parents, particularly in the ECD context? There's a lot of questions that people have around parenting in different aspects of provision. And I think I was, Bridge has been quite privileged to have CoP members who have really been thinking about, these questions and have really been advocating, to give them space. And so in the first COP, what we had then decided was, we need a way of, elevating this role, and how do we do it? And so we agreed that perhaps it would be good to have a seminar, where we could initiate dialogue around those pertinent questions that we have. And perhaps the seminar could be a beginning of, an initiative. We don't know what shape or form this initiative is supposed to take, but we do know that there needs to be, an sort of ongoing process around, issues of parenting. So we actually then decided to have a working group, and in that working group is myself, Kautha as bridge representatives, Kayin, Kadima, Pam, Fadiela from Alru. Yeah, I don't think I'm missing anyone else. Oh, as well as Yamke from DGMT. Yeah, I think that's all of us. And yeah, colleagues, we've been meeting quite often, just thinking of, how the seminar is supposed to pan out. And what we had then decided was really, we have a good idea of what the purpose and objectives are. And I would just like to share those with you. So the purpose of the seminar is really to galvanize key stakeholders around strengthening support for parents of young children. And we aim to promote the importance of the role of the parent and their need for support to grow and develop their capabilities in shaping their children's future and unlocking their potential. So the objectives that we had then come up with were three, which is number one, to identify and showcase what support for parenting already exists within South Africa. And then the second one was to share lessons on what has and has not worked. And then thirdly would be to map out an ideal world for parenting, or what an ideal world for parenting would look like. So a lot of these conversations that we're having currently within the COPs, because I mean, we've already had a COP even in KZN that was focusing on parenting, where we had Clowns Without Borders presenting to the COP members, as well as the Parent-Child Center also presenting. So we have sort of used all of these discussions to shape what the seminar could look like. And as a start, colleagues, we've had conversations with the National Department of Social Development, and we were thinking that the National Department of Social Development could really address this first objective. So just by the way, the objectives have also kind of helped us to form an agenda. So we're actually forming an agenda around, these three objectives that we've stated here. And in the first objective, the National Department of Social Development is quite keen to come on board and showcase a program that they have developed, I believe, in partnership with UNICEF. This program is currently being implemented in the provinces, as we were told. And I think it would be a good opportunity for them just to give us an idea of what is happening at a national level in terms of parenting. And well, we understand that, with the function shift happening, the Department of Social Development will most likely retain the social protection and parenting programs. So we thought that this would be a good idea for us just to get an understanding of, at a national level, what is the department planning, and, what could we input around there. And I think it was also quite a useful engagement for us as the Western Cape ECD CoP to just plug in with the National Department of Social Development. They're really looking for ways in which they can access and collaborate with organizations that are working in parenting. And as a result, we've been able to nominate someone from the South African Positive Parenting Initiative Network to be part of the intersectoral forum that the National Department is currently the National Department is currently running as a way to sort of bring civil society and government together to discuss, challenges and issues and to come up with solutions. So one of the subcommittees in the intersectoral forum is social protection, and parenting is one of the things they focus on. So SAPN will be representing Bridge, I guess, in that committee to bring those issues around parenting, to the fore. And I also understand that DSD is also had also requested a way to sort of access SAPN and other parenting networks, and that's what's been happening there. So, and then with the second objective, colleagues, we are thinking is that we want to have people who've actually done research, just kind of share, what has worked and what hasn't worked in terms of parenting programs. So this could be maybe programs that have been evaluated or research that's been conducted before, but yeah, we haven't really finalized who would be addressing us in terms of this objective. And then thirdly, we want to then provide the participants that day with an opportunity to sort of map out what they think is an ideal world for parent support. So like I said, colleagues, this is something that we think, is a way to initiate a dialogue in terms of strengthening parenting support within the sector. And yeah, we keep on just coming up with ideas of, how we could really just strengthen collaborations out there or even form new collaborations. But yeah, we're thinking of having the seminar in September. We're not necessarily sure of the date. We want to bring it to mid-September. And yeah, we'll have to finalize a date quite soon, but that's the time we're thinking around. So just in the form of an update, colleagues, this is where we are. And we would be quite happy to hear any input that you might have, just regarding our thinking on this seminar, and if maybe there are things that you would also like to see, from a process perspective.
Thanks, Thandeka. So it's open again to the floor. So any colleagues are welcome to put up their hands or unmute and bring in your thoughts. Thanks for joining, Linda. Does this sound like, oh, I see Lydia's hands up. Lydia, would you like to come in?
Yeah, this is just an offer. I mean, we are two people that recently finished our PhDs focusing on children and parenting programs. And I'm sure my fellow student mate will be available, so we can maybe present our findings and what worked within our work and what didn't work. This is just a suggestion. Okay.
Thanks, Lydia. We do appreciate that offer. That's be in touch after the meeting to learn a little bit more about about the work. That sounds like a fantastic suggestion. As we said, we don't fully know who will be approaching yet, but I think it's good to think about that.
Yes, thank you so much for that offer, Lydia.
Does what Thandeka has presented sound like an exciting thing to other colleagues? I'd be interested in knowing, if you'd be excited to join us and also support this process. I see Kara's clapping her hands.
Can I ask?
Lydia?
Yeah, I would like to ask another question. I think that would also, do you also think of people presenting or submitting papers for this seminar? Yeah, because the reason why I'm asking is that I've got 6 students that's doing parenting communication programs at various levels. So do you see them just as participants, or will this be an opportunity for also for first-time paper writers and journal writers to present their work?
It's a good question. And I mean, I have actually organized sort of a graduate conference like what you're describing previously, but the way we'd envisioned this at the moment is really, I guess, an opportunity and really just an initial opportunity for key role players in the sector to help to sketch out a high level understanding of what the sort of the landscape looks like, and then to move into starting to think about what it could look like. You know, as Thandeka's already mentioned, there's a fantastic, we have quite a good working relationship with the Department of Social Development. The ISF, there's this, a working group within the ISF that are working on this issue. Yeah, we're hopeful that inputs at this moment in time could have an impact on how parenting work at a national level is considered. And also, you know, to learn from what already is happening within that space. And so I think what you're describing is a very valuable thing, and it may even be something we want to plan going forward. But it's not how we originally constructed this vision of what we were planning to work on. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. It does.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts, suggestions?
I think Andisiwe had her hand up.
Yes.
Hi, sorry. I'm going to struggle because my son is homesick, so he might make a bit of noise in the background. Sorry about that. Just to put that at the forefront. But I wanted to sort of ask around. So I think I really like the idea of what the sector looks like, what it could look like if parents were really brought into, were really supported well. But I was also wondering, because the work that we're doing is not necessarily in the ECD sector, it's in the basic education sector, but what the pipeline look like for parents as well, going throughout the whole process. I don't know if that actually fits into this, because this is ECD work. But I think one of the big things that I've sort of noticed in the work that we're doing is that parents, there's a lot of effort to bring parents into the ECD sector, but as they move through the pipeline, it's sort of, the effort is not there, and there's no one asking these questions as much as you guys are asking right now in the community of practice. So I was wondering if that could be something that could also be explored, is around like what the pipeline could look like in general for parents overall. Yeah.
It's a good question.
Can I come in there? Thanks, Andisiwe, for that comment. And it's funny, I had joined a seminar, a webinar that Jet and Rios had hosted a couple of months ago. And I remember Kathama was also presenting there. And in that meeting, I sort of got the sense that, geesh, the foundation intermediary phase, you know, Department of Basic Education, there seems to be quite a lot of activity around parenting. And I was sort of in the same position you are now, where you're thinking that, you know what, there's so much that's happening in ECD. So perhaps you are right in that we need to start thinking about how do we feed into each other, you know, in terms of, you know, those phases from ECD and into the schooling phases, you know, how do we maintain that parental involvement and how do we maintain that parental support? So I think it's a very critical question, and we'll definitely be thinking about it, you know, as we finalize, you know, particularly how that section around mapping is supposed to play out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, we as a working group, I think, are particularly focused on ECD and wanting to make sure that the specific needs of parents at within that age group are elevated. But I think you're right, Andisiwe, that, you know, parents are going to go through the entire life phase, and we should be planning in a way that's considerate of that. And when I think about, you know, the programs that are really good at onboarding parents, you know, like Mom Connect, for example, where most parents are going to be involved in a single experience with the Department of Health. I guess the question for me is sort of how is that torch then picked up as we move through onto, you know, beyond the first areas of life development. So I think that way of thinking about it as a continuum, I think, is a really useful one. Lydia, your hand is up. I don't know if that's an old hand or a new one. Pam, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just to say that Mom Connect already goes through to age 5, because I was part of the panel of experts developing the messaging. So that has already been extended, although I have to say I never saw the final product.
Lovely, Pam. Very glad to hear that. I wasn't aware. But yeah, and I think it's helpful to also, just as a starting point, to be able to, you know, say this is what the sector already looks like, and then what are the gaps, because the sector is developing all the time, but always useful to refresh our understanding. Any other questions or comments or suggestions? Okay, we are moving through the agenda much more quickly than we had imagined. I think partly because, yeah, clearly the presenters are doing a really good job and there aren't a lot of questions. So yeah, I think, you know, the last section that we wanted to talk about really is just what the next steps for this community of practice are. I do also want to give colleagues another opportunity to share any updates that they would like to share about, you know, some of the work that you're doing, if there's any insights that you think are useful for the group, or any sort of news updates that I think that the sector should be aware of. But if there aren't any of those, then we can always start to think about what are the next steps of this particular community of practice. Pam, would you like to come in?
Just going back to parents on the tech side and parents' ability, you know, quite beyond the costs of data and the access to smartphones and so on and so forth. Through our experiences in trying this out on the ground with parents across a range of communities from Mpumalanga, KZN and Worcester, we've also found that there's a real challenge with ability to use technology, that people often don't have the most basic skills around the use of technology. And we've been applying our minds on, you know, what could be done in that way to help people develop those really basic skills that enable them even to do things like online banking and set up an email and, you know, some fairly practical things that are needed. And I wondered whether anybody else knows of anything that's been done in on that side.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. One of the constraints on a lot of this work. Lydia?
There's an organization in Bridgetown called R Labs, and you can just like Google R Labs. They do fantastic work. They've got most of their courses are especially for mothers, and older people are on a Saturday morning, and it's mothers and something, I think it's called, and it's for free, where they've actually introduced people to the basic use of computers and smartphones, how to pay online and how to communicate online. There are various youth cafes and satellite spaces where they do the training. So I suggest go online, search for R Labs and contact them. They're brilliant. Yeah.
Maybe somebody that we could even consider as a contributor in one of our future meetings. I always hear about R Labs and I'm never up to date with what they're doing. So certainly an organization to potentially touch base with. Thanks for that reminder, Lydia. So yeah, I think that's a great, yes, R Labs, Marlon Parker. Okay, so I think a number of our colleagues are also having to leave, and I don't want to keep people beyond, beyond what we need to. So I think the last topic really is this one of what are the next steps for this community of practice. We already, as we've noted, are working on the seminar. As a result of the seminar, we're hoping that there may be potentially some work products or future, there may be a follow-up seminar that is created from the first one. If you're interested in getting involved or have any questions, you're welcome to contact. So myself, Thandeka and Katha are all working on that. So you're welcome to contact one of us if you have any suggestions or thoughts or interest. Then in terms of other things, in terms of this community of practice, if there are other suggestions, please do raise them now. Otherwise, we will need to plan a session for the next quarter. Katha, maybe when is that session? And yeah, do we have any working ideas for what might be included as topics?
Kayin, we don't have a confirmed date yet. But as soon as we do, we'll let everyone know. But in the meantime, if there are any ideas or any special interests, yeah, feel free to drop myself and Thandeka an email, and we could explore that for perhaps our next topic.
Thank you. It seems like parenting has been quite a strong theme this year, so we may continue with that, but we may also find that there are other areas that need to be addressed. Lydia, your hand is still up. I'm not sure if that's an old hand. And then Pam, your hand is also up. Lydia, do you want to come in? Is that a new hand? I'm assuming not. Pam, do you want to come in?
Mine, yes, it's quite interesting. We've got this very holistic early childhood development program in Mpumalanga, where we're trying to implement the entire national integrated ECD policy. And in the engagements with DSD, we've really struggled over the last 4 years to get them to play the role that they should be playing in the parenting program. So we do a parenting program there in partnership with the Community Works program, but using the national DSD UNICEF parenting program, and it's been a struggle. And now all of a sudden, where they're beginning to see that they are losing ECD, so to speak, there's a sudden interest in the parenting program and how they can get involved. So I think the time really is ripe to support ECD, to show them what can be done if they lean on the expertise and experiences that exist in the sector.
Thanks. I appreciate that sort of strategic lens that you're providing there, Pam. I mean, I think, Thandeka noted that we've already managed to work with the department to get SAPN represented on the ISF. And I think this kind of work, helping to connect the dots, is one of the things Bridge is exceptionally good at. So yeah, I'm hoping that there are more opportunities to, in a sense, help to seed best practice and connect the dots where it's possible. Okay, colleagues, I don't see any more hands. So I'm assuming that is the input that colleagues have on one of the next steps are. So we'll continue with where we're going, but please do feel free to contact us if you have thoughts, input, suggestions. We really do love to hear from you. Yeah, without further ado, I think I want to move on to closing. Thandeka, Katha, is anything I've missed that you want to chip in on before we close?
Nothing from my side, Kayin.
Thandeka, everything okay on yours?
Everything is okay on my side, Kayin.
Okay, great. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining. I found this a very interesting session. I hope that you did as well. As we say, we'll continue to do work in the sector and keep everyone abreast of what's been happening. I think we're trying to transition from being primarily an in-person communities of practice, and we've had to be online a lot we know different as colleagues are sort of sitting behind laptops and computers. So just so you know, we are always thinking about how we can include your voices more and make you feel more sort of part of the process. So if you do have any suggestions or thoughts, love to hear from you. But yeah, thank you for joining today. Thank you for contributing your thoughts and suggestions and questions. Yeah, and we'll be organizing another meeting in about another 3 months. So you'll see our invite coming out then. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Kayin, and thanks, Bridge, for organizing. Much appreciated.
Thanks to your team.
Great.
As well.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.